When drunk, do you feel an anger that you can't control? Do you feel sorry for yourself?
There were 3 things my ex-wife said were the reasons she gave up on me. She said I wanted children, but you refused. I asked for sex, but you refused. And finally, I wanted you to make me feel loved, but when you wouldn't give me that, I left you.
In the new episode of Can't Ask, we're with Biral. Biral is an alcoholic. Hello.
Hello?
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Are you ready to answer the questions our followers asked?
I am.
Can you tell us about yourself?
I'm 43 years old. I am an engineer by profession. I had a very good education. I had a successful business life. I am single. I've been married once. For 25 years, I am addicted to alcohol. I haven't used any alcohol or drugs for the last 3 years. I've been sober for 3 years.
When did you first start drinking?
I remember I started drinking when I was 8 years old, drinking cologne with my cousin, spilling the whiskey my uncle brought from abroad on the floor and licking it off the floor at the age of 8. I started drinking alcohol intensively at the age of 15 in the summer house.
Was there a situation or event that pushed you to become an alcoholic?
At the age of 15, when I first drank alcohol, I felt the emptiness inside me fill up. In later years, when I thought about what caused this emptiness, I realized that the mental and physical abuse I had suffered from my family in my childhood was the cause of this emptiness. With alcohol, I felt complete. When I was 5 years old, my mother was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And my father had antisocial personality disorder. Not only did I not get any attention or care from them, but I was also physically and mentally abused.
How often and how much alcohol did you drink?
I can summarize my drinking pattern for 25 years as follows. My first 10 years were spent partying on weekends during high school and university years. Every weekend, a couple days a week, I would definitely get drunk. Then, when I turned 25, my drinking pattern was that I couldn't get drunk after going out at night or drinking with a friend. And I would drink alcohol all night until the morning after I got home. In the last 15 years, as far as I can remember, I only drank at home alone until I passed out and completely lost control. And I would do this every day, sometimes without a break. The days blended into one another. The amount of alcohol I drank varied, but my only goal was to drink enough to pass out. And sometimes it was 2 bottles of vodka, and sometimes dozens of beers. My only goal was to pass out to the point where I couldn't recognize myself.
How did you feel under the influence of alcohol?
Under the influence of alcohol, I felt like a complete person, a man. My friends around me, they all had accomplishments. I didn't have any academic achievements. I wasn't good at any sports or physical activities either. I was not handsome either. But after drinking alcohol, I was very happy with who I was. I could be whoever I wanted to be. I was successful. The best career I ever had, the best thing I ever did in my life was to drink well.
When did you first feel you were losing control?
I believe that I never lost control of my drinking problem. For 25 years, I was a controlled drinker. I could quit anytime I wanted to, but there were many reasons why I couldn't. External reasons, traumas in my family, until one day I realized that all the things I cared about, the things that were important to me, my job, my career, my material possessions, my self-confidence, were taken away from me. That's when I realized and accepted that I was never really in control. That I was fooling myself, and I accepted it.
At what point did you realize you were addicted to alcohol?
Around the age of 25, I realized it. I started to damage my body, my liver, and other organs. I turned into a very asocial person. I was drinking alone. I accepted that alcohol was a problem. I was taking measures to deal with it and trying to get better. But what I didn't want to hear was that I would never be able to drink alcohol again. There was always this question at the back of my mind. I was depressed because I had suffered violence from my family, and because I was depressed, I was drinking alcohol. If I solved my depression, my alcohol problem would disappear. However, at that point, I did not realize that my depression and alcohol addiction were intertwined. After I was diagnosed with major depression, I was supposed to stop drinking alcohol with the medication I was taking. However, I was using alcohol to overcome my problems, to heal my illness, to forget the traumas I had experienced with my family, to experience that feeling of completeness, to become a man, to perform successfully in business life, to be a son, a husband, a boyfriend, a friend who can fulfill what is expected of you. For years, I had achieved these things by drinking alcohol. But the one thing I could not accept was the thought that I could not drink again. I realized that alcohol was a problem at the age of 40. That's when I lost my marriage, my job, and all the things I really cared about.
How much money did you spend on alcohol per month?
I don't remember the exact figure, but I remember the money I lost because of alcohol. I was going to get married. I spent all the money we saved for the wedding on alcohol and related debts.
Have you tried to replace alcohol with something else?
I tried to replace alcohol with other substances. I changed the type of alcohol I drank. I changed the number of days I drank alcohol. I counted the sips. I divided it into hours. I went from 40% to 12%. I went from red to yellow. But I never truly accepted the idea that I shouldn't drink alcohol anymore.
When drunk, is there anger inside you that you can't control?
It happens all the time. During the day, in traffic, at work, and among friends. There were many things I couldn't say. But when I got drunk, especially during those lonely times at home, I would confront all my inner struggles and say everything I wanted to express while drinking alone. And the anger in me would reach an incredible intensity.
Do you regret it when you sober up?
When I was drinking, this is how I felt regret after I sobered up. I was thinking to myself, how can a person like me not control his drinking? How can I be so strong-willed and not be able to manage alcohol and my emotions? Every morning with this feeling of regret, I promised myself, I will not drink anymore in the evening. I will not drink so much from now on. 8 or 10 hours after making this promise, I would find myself back in front of the bottles of alcohol. I was drinking alone. I wasn't with my friends when I should have been with them, or when I should have been with my family. I was either utterly drunk or dealing with a hangover. After some time, my friends cut off contact with me. I was also in a constant fight with my family. I was angry with them, they were angry with me. And finally, I found myself alone, drinking in my house. It's a very typical behavior to attribute the things I did to alcohol, but when I look back today, after I came out of the effects of alcohol, I see that I did all those ridiculous behaviors with regret and anger. One of them is the fight I had with my mother and the physical violence I inflicted. I wasn't drunk at the time, I was sober, but I had the anger and hatred of the night before. In other words, alcohol steals me away, yet the anger and persistent thoughts that come afterward keep impacting my life even when I'm sober.
What was the worst decision you made during this period?
After I admitted I was an alcoholic, I used to think that the people around me and my work life were the reasons for this. I thought that if I changed these things, then I could get rid of this disease. So I changed my job. I changed the cities I lived in. I changed partners. I changed girlfriends. I thought if I changed them, I would be happier. They were the cause of my unhappiness, and because of this unhappiness, I was drinking. I had enough power. The problem was around me. If I change them, then I will be where I want to be, where I deserve to be, and then I will be happy. But it doesn't last. Somehow my life doesn't go the way I want it to, no matter where I go. I'm the director of the life I have built. I wrote the script, but when it doesn't go the way I want, I either get angry at people around me or blame myself. I can say that almost every day of 15 years has been like this.
What was the biggest damage you did to yourself while drinking?
If you mean something like cutting myself with a razor, then I didn't do that. But probably being unaware of myself while drunk and during this period, not allowing myself to fully feel my emotions and trying to live through these feelings with alcohol, whether it's anger or happiness. One of the things I remember was this. When I was angry, I would drink alcohol to get over this anger or fear, to speed up time, or when I was anxious. Or when I was happy, when I was very happy about something, I would drink alcohol to slow down time, to increase the pleasure of that moment. Alcohol became a remote control for me to manage time. Using alcohol in this way and not being able to realize myself is the biggest damage I have done to myself.
Did you lose your sense of self when you were drunk?
I was already drinking until I lost my sense of self. I didn't remember what I did after that. When I woke up in the morning, I would try to remember what I did by looking at the messages on my cell phone and the people I called. For me, this kind of life had become a very ordinary, normal life. When I look back now, I realized that I did most of the things I did to the people I offended in that state of regret and anger after I came out of the effects of alcohol.
Do you consume alcohol secretly from others?
This is how I started drinking alcohol. I told you I started at the age of 15. People wanted me around when I was drunk. I felt like a self-confident, self-actualized man who talks to girls and dances well. Most of the time when we would go out somewhere on the weekends when I was at university, they would say, "Come along. We have so much fun with you. You know the places very well and you dance well. Come on, let's do something together." Alcohol was not something to hide for a long time for me. Until I was 25, on the contrary, I was trying to show it to everyone. I was bragging about how I was drinking. Afterwards, after continuing the same pattern, it didn't have the same effect as before. After drinking, I realized that I became a problematic, aggressive person. Both my close friends told me, and I realized it myself. Then I started to withdraw myself. As I continued to drink, I couldn't be in social environments. I couldn't be around my friends. The more I couldn't be around them, the more I started drinking alone, the more I regretted it the next morning, and they moved away from me. Finally, I didn't have anyone around me anymore. So, there was no way to hide my drinking, no way to show them how little I drank. During my marriage, when my wife was away, or when she was working, when she was going somewhere, it was like a holiday for me. Because that's when I was drinking freely. Lately, I'd reached a point where I no longer hid it or couldn't hide it anymore. Since I couldn't sleep without drinking alcohol, I didn't have any problem hiding it. I couldn't hide it.
How did alcohol affect your sex life?
In the beginning, for the first 10 years, alcohol had actually increased my sexual performance. Then, after I entered a period of self-pity and regret, and alcohol completely killed my sexual desire.
How did being drunk all the time affect your social life and relationships?
People around me were actually joking about my alcoholism. "Birol drinks a lot." This sentence they said about me made me feel proud of myself. I felt good about myself. "Birol drinks a lot. Birol drinks a lot, but nothing can happen to him. He'll be fine." Drinking was the best thing I did in my life, and then staying sober, going to work the next day, being on the job. In fact, when I look at it today, even all that was just An illusion, a delusion.
How did alcohol affect your professional life?
In my professional life, I was a successful employee. I was an engineer. I remember a thing my manager said about me. If Baral wants to do something, no one can stop him. But if he doesn't want to do it, nothing in this world can make him do it. For years, this made me feel more confident about myself. I was a good employee. But I now realize that because of my pride and self-centeredness, I had reached a point where I only did what I felt like doing and ignored what I didn't. The reason for this is that on days when I was not under the influence of alcohol, I was willing, if I was under the influence of alcohol, if I was hungover, which I was every day, I did not want to do anything. I would drink until 4 or 5 in the morning and go to work with 1 to 2 hours of sleep. I thought I didn't smell, that they didn't realize. I remember one day we were in a very important meeting. My manager was there. My head fell forward. I fell asleep and snored in front of everyone. And I lied about it, saying that I didn't sleep last night because my mother was sick. I thought I could successfully hide it. I thought I was hiding it. But then I realized that people knew very well that I was actually hungover, and they had seen it in me for years.
Why do you think you couldn't give up alcohol for such a long time?
I accepted that alcohol was a problem, but I didn't accept the solution of never drinking again. At the back of my mind, I thought I could be a social drinker. I could be like normal people. What was wrong with me? I could be a social drinker like them, but I couldn't do it. I saw signs of it many times. I completely destroyed cars. Once I came out of a burning house. I don't remember how I woke up. I was completely out of it, so drunk that I lost my sense of self. I had a place where I kept pizza boxes. I emptied an ashtray into it. That ashtray had burned from the inside without any visible flame, and it ended up setting the entire flooring and the couch on fire. When I woke up, the whole house was full of smoke. I don't know how I woke up. I told this story to the doctors, I told it to my friends, but the only thing that mattered to me, and all I could think of, was that I drank too much. I was drinking a lot because of other mental disorders. I was drinking because I didn't like myself. I was drinking because I loved myself too much. Nobody understood me. I never truly belonged in this world anyway. I believed I was someone special, made different from the rest. I had so many talents. They didn't see me. I felt sorry for myself, but at the same time, I had a lot of confidence in myself. That's why for many years I thought that I could beat alcohol on my own. In the middle of life, there was me, my wishes, and people around me to fulfill them. It was like I was in a movie whose script was written by me. When the movie didn't go the way I wanted, I either blamed myself, the director, or the other actors. It was a time of arrogance and self-pity. It lasted for 25 years.
Do you feel sorry for yourself?
I was experiencing self-pity in this way. I had a constant inner voice in my head saying, "You're incompetent. You're a failure. You're already an alcoholic. You've already done nothing good. You don't belong to this world. They don't understand you." I was feeling these kinds of things. Now that I look at it, I see that those emotions were actually a kind of concealed pride. I placed myself on such a high pedestal that when I couldn't live up to it, I constantly felt sorry for myself. Since this self-pity caused me a lot of pain, it was my typical behavior for years to get out of them by numbing myself.
Did being an alcoholic cause other psychological disorders?
I learned this during my sobriety. Alcoholism is a serious and fatal disease, and medicine knows very little about it at the moment. Alcoholism is a physical, mental, and psychological disease. Physically, I started having liver problems. Mentally, I had brain diseases. I realized by getting sober on this path that the psychological side of it, the mental side of it, had to be dealt with separately anyway. When I finally accepted the need to heal, and I'll say it again, in order to recover from my physical, mental, and psychological illnesses, I had to stop reaching for that drink in the first place.
Were you hospitalized because of your alcohol addiction?
My doctor told me that given the state I was in, I was clearly an alcoholic, and that if I had been abroad, they would have hospitalized me much earlier. But under the conditions in Turkey, he said, most alcoholics who come to them are usually in the final stage, completely out of it. He recommended me to be hospitalized in that hospital. He said it hoping it would spark some awareness in me. Yes, I was hospitalized. I spent about 4 nights there, and I remember saying, I am not as bad as the alcoholics here. I can handle this on my own. And then 3 weeks later, I found myself back in front of the liquor bottles.
How did you go through the process of quitting?
After my doctor advised me that I shouldn't drink anymore, I actually continued drinking for another 6 months until I lost everything. Then I went to an organization that was recommended to me, and after listening to the stories of the lives of alcoholics like me for some time, how they struggled, how they changed, and how they managed to stay sober, I finally felt ready to stay sober myself and do whatever it takes to make that possible. After that, my recovery process and my sobriety process started.
When did you decide to quit?
I had a lot of difficulties in my life in England. I was studying during the day and working at night. Then I had the opportunity to do my master's degree. How can a person like me be so weak-willed against alcohol? A person who has the power to achieve anything loses all willpower when it comes to alcohol. I had no power over that substance, the one I turned to during every emotional upheaval, the one that let me feel life and my emotions. But in other areas of my life, I was very successful. Or rather, I thought this was the case. I realized it was in fact an illusion when I was 40 years old, when I realized that I was actually just a grown-up child, someone who still felt emotions like a 15-year-old. I found myself having lost my job, my spouse, my possessions, and ultimately, my entire sense of self. And it was at that point that I finally came to accept that I had to stop drinking.
How did you quit?
There were 3 things my ex-wife said were the reasons she gave up on me. She said I wanted children, but you refused. I asked for sex, but you refused. And finally, I wanted you to make me feel loved, but when you wouldn't give me that, I left you. It was really humiliating for me to hear this sentence as a man, as a human being, and to become such a person in the face of alcohol. It took me about 6 months to accept this disease and to accept that I could no longer drink alcohol and that I should not approach alcohol. For 6 months, I tried to get to know myself and my feelings. For someone who had done everything through alcohol until now, getting to know myself, recognizing my emotions, being able to truly feel them, and accepting life as it is, with all its conditions, was an entirely new way of living for me. I continued to live my life based on the mindset I had since I was 15. Now I was in the process of slowly rebuilding myself and putting myself back together.
How did you feel when you didn't drink for a long time?
I remember the first period of my recovery. After I first quit alcohol, for 6 months, I experienced constant tremors and anxiety. I was stuck in a spiral of thoughts like, what do people think of me? Did I do something wrong? Am I enough? How will I live from now on? I used to do everything with alcohol. Does this mean I won't even be able to go out at night anymore? I was overwhelmed with uncertainty and deeply worried about my future. These thoughts disappeared after 6 months. Now I can do the good things I used to do with alcohol, going to concerts, going to soccer matches, barbecues, dinners. Now I can do these things without alcohol. I can experience the same joy and peace.
Do you feel the urge to drink now?
I feel the urge to drink. I don't have the urge to drink right now, but it can happen at any time. I prefer not to drink today. For me, going for my first drink right now means dying. What makes me want to drink especially is my anger and my expectations from people. I need to learn to live with these emotions. And this takes time. For the first 6 months, I avoided social environments to keep the temptation to drink at bay. What I told myself at that time was that I shouldn't drink. When I felt those urges, I reminded myself that I shouldn't drink. After 1 or 2 years, I don't need to drink anymore, but I cannot change how I feel. Becoming aware of these emotions and accepting that I cannot control them, I rely on surrendering myself to both the feelings and to God during my recovery. I actively apply these techniques and connect with others who are addicted or have recovered before me to gain insight from their experiences. I try to keep myself in a constant state of surrender. What I try to remind myself is that I am an addict. I will continue to feel those urges, but I don't need to drink for today. I allow this feeling to come and go. These urges to drink, the cravings, anxieties, and obsessive thoughts are gradually decreasing, but it never goes away forever. What I try to remind myself every day is that I don't need to drink to experience these feelings. I let these feelings pass through me. Other things are possible. And with God's help, I believe that by practicing these methods, I have been able to achieve real sobriety.
How do you think an alcoholic can quit?
I cannot comment on anyone's alcoholism. I decided for myself. But I can say this. People who recognize alcohol as a problem can turn to professionals at hospitals. Amatem clinics, Green Crescent's Yedam Center, and the fellowship group for alcoholics called Alcoholics Anonymous, where they can listen to advice and support.
Do you think alcoholism is a disease?
My brain is not like other people's. When I take my first sip from my drink, the neurons in my brain react in a different way from yours. Once I start, I can't stop. So the only way to recover from this disease is not to drink in the first place. I made many mistakes when I was an alcoholic. Do I regret it? I regret what I did. I don't hide behind this disease. There are spiritual principles that I apply to make up for them. That's how I continue my life. I make an effort every day to stay away from it so that it doesn't affect me. I have no regrets about the past, but neither do I wipe the slate clean. I have a lot to learn from my experiences, emotions, and traumas that I didn't want to go through. Those are the things that brought me to today and made me the individual I am today. I see that there is a lot to learn and I am just beginning. My only goal is to stay sober for today. I remind myself that I am powerless against alcohol.
What can the family of an addict do during the treatment?
The people around me, my family and friends gave me different suggestions about my alcohol addiction before. They raised my awareness. They gave me punishments. One of the things I remember is that my wife used to take videos of me when I was drunk, and after she went to work and I couldn't remember what I had done, I would open that video with regret and remember what I had done. That was one of the things that my family and my environment did to me. That didn't work for me. For me, the turning point was admitting I couldn't drink anymore and listening to another recovering alcoholic. That's when I realized this was a disease I couldn't control, and I accepted my own weakness.
Can every person who drinks alcohol become an alcoholic?
Every person who drinks alcohol has, on average, a 50% chance of becoming an alcoholic at some point in their life. I'm saying this according to medical literature and the information given to me by my doctor.